Good evening, everyone. I will call this regularly scheduled meeting of Bridgewater Town Council to order. Are there any additions to the agenda? In terms of deletions, I think what I'll ask is that 9.2, which is the recommendation of the Bridgewater Anti-Racism Task Force, which was a letter to the letter of support regarding meeting with the group in order to dealing with African Nova Scotians, and of course the Minister for African Nova Scotians is not African Nova Scotian, and so there was a group requesting a meeting with the Premier to address this. My understanding is last week the Premier said that he will be doing just that. So my suggestion is that we kind of hold that for now. We can take that off the agenda and wait and trust that the Premier will commit to his word and meet with them and appoint somebody, hopefully a deputy minister who is African Nova Scotian to that file. So if there's no objections from council, I suggest we just hold on to that one, and we can circle back in 2 weeks if we need to. Any other additions or deletions? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Fagier, seconded by Councillor Thorburn. All those in favor? All right. The agenda is approved. Any announcements from members of council? Councillor Thorburn.
Yes. November 11th will happen on November 11th this year, again. Pretty much the same as last year. There'll be no parade. The band actually will be on site and be part of the ceremony, as well as a piper. And it will be live streamed, the ceremony. The only difference this year is that wreaths will be laid as part of the ceremony, not laid before the ceremony. And we are allowed to gather for Member State service at the park without proof of vaccination if there's no clear entry point, and there's numerous points where you can get in there. While masking wouldn't automatically be mandatory, given proof of vaccination is not required, attendees and participants should be encouraged to wear masks to provide an extra barrier and social distance where possible. But if in doubt, stay home and live stream it, because we want to make it safe for everybody. And I think that pretty much covers it.
Thank you, Councillor Thorburn. Just a couple, I should have started the meeting by just reminding people that the town of Bridgewater is located in Mi'kma'ki, which is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Other announcements from members of council? That was like the official opening to the meeting. I'm just going to quickly, I posted this morning. This weekend, I know there's a lot of changes in the rules and restrictions regarding COVID. We seem to have, every time we go from one phase to the next phase, there's lots of questions, and like I get it, people's anxiety kind of gets up. I received a lot of messages this weekend from people concerned that businesses weren't asking for proof of vaccination. So just want to note a couple of things. The first is, I'm not the person you call. If you really feel it needs to address, I would strongly suggest that you speak to someone at the business. A lot of this could be probably answered by the fact that a lot of businesses they're regular customers. They're making note, and with their customers' permission, noting who has already shown their proof of vaccination. So assuming that just because they didn't ask somebody means that they're not checking everybody, I don't think that's a correct assumption to make. I know a number of businesses that are keeping track of names. I know churches are keeping track of names. So it probably would solve a lot of problems and headaches if you just reach out to the business and say, I was concerned that you didn't ask for this, and I'm sure they would have an explanation. Because I know businesses in our community especially are working very, very hard to make sure they follow the rules they have from day one. But again, if there is something that's concerning you and you don't want to call the business, I'm not the person to call. If you need to address it with the authorities, then you need to call the police if it's something that needs to be enforced. The other thing is, every one of the messages I got this weekend started with, a friend told me. Nobody can action any incident that starts with a friend told me, whether it's a crime that took place or dealing with COVID. It has to be the person that's involved that reports that directly. So just please understand, there are proper processes to go through, but really our businesses are trying really hard through this whole thing. It's been, whatever, 20 million months now, and it's, I know it's painful, and I know people are stressed, so just some patience, reach out to the business, express your concern, and I'm sure they'll give you an answer, and that would be my starting point. So just a reminder on that one. Anything else from council? Hearing none. Are there any delegations? I know we have a member of the public here. I don't know if there's anyone that wishes to speak, but now is the time. If not, we will move in. We have the minutes from September 27th, 2021, regular town council meeting. Any errors or omissions there? Councillor Thorburn?
Yes, Your Worship. Page 1, you got a fire department responding to 3,000 calls. I think it was 300, maybe be more like correct.
Okay, we'll make that change. Although I'm sure for them sometimes it feels like 3,000 calls. Any other issues there? Hearing none, motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Councillor Thorburn, seconded by Councillor Caldwell. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Down to correspondence for action. 8.1, we have a request from Branch 24 Royal Canadian Legion, Bridgewater, use of the transit bus on Remembrance Day. This has been a big bonus.
May I be excused? Conflict.
Yes, sir. Yep. Thank you, Councillor Thorburn. This has been one of the added bonuses of having a bus at our disposal is on Remembrance Day, being able to use that to transport veterans who cannot walk all the way down to the cenotaph. So there is a motion there. Someone prepared to make that motion? Deputy Mayor?
I move the council for the town of Bridgewater approve the use of a Bridgewater transit bus on Remembrance Day 2021 to transport veterans to the cenotaph.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Conklin. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We're down to reports. You can come back, Councillor Thorburn. Thank you. I always appreciate when a member of council declares a conflict, because I don't know if the public are aware, the onus is on that member of council to do that, so appreciate that. 9.1 is Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program, the monthly report for September. I know I sound like a broken record, but I do hope people read through these. It's unbelievable how many people they help every month. And a thank you there to United Way, who provided them some funding that they use to help seniors, so big shout out to them. So that's there if anyone wants to download that and read it. It's in the council agenda package on our website. We're going to skip 9.2 as we delete that from the agenda, and down to 9.3. Are we waiting for our...
We're waiting.
Okay. Why don't we skip 9.3? We'll come back to that because we're waiting for our Director of Finance, because we're just going super quick here. 9.4, the Global Race to Zero campaign. Do you want to speak to that one?
Yeah. So this is a request for Town Council to consider registering the town in the International Race to Zero campaign. It's a global campaign. I believe at the COP26 conference in October, they will be promoting and announcing those who have made the pledge or commitment to the campaign. It's a UN-backed global campaign rallying non-state actors such as cities, regions, companies, educational facilities to basically take immediate action to halve global emissions by 2030 and deliver a healthier, fairer, zero carbon world at that time. There's some commitments that are required by participating companies or cities, towns, everything that would be done. So right now we have a plan, a community energy investment plan that the council adopted, and that plan we have a target of 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. So if I don't remember, the council probably remembers we brought a plan to you to indicate here's kind of an estimate of what that commitment means in terms of dollars for capital investments that would be required to do that. So we've costed that plan out. And this plan essentially would require us to up the ante a little bit, to go from 80% reduction by 2050 to 100, and then an end-term reduction of 50% by 2030. So they're a bit more ambitious than our current commitments, but they are things that council may wish to commit to. We are also required to have some pledges or requirements that we have to undertake immediately if we wish to make the pledge and participate in this. And those are noted in the report as well, about public endorsement on the principles that are within this initiative. So recognize the global climate emergency and publicly endorse that. Commit to keeping global heating below the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Agreement. Commit to putting inclusive climate action at the center of all decision making to create thriving and equitable communities for everyone. Invite our partners, political leaders, CEOs, unions, investors, and civil society to join us. And pledge to reach net zero in the 2040s, but 2050 is actually the date, the end date, but earlier if you can, or by mid-century at the latest, which is the 2050, in line with global efforts to limit warming by 1.5 degrees Celsius. And as I mentioned, we have 80% targets, so that would up that to 100%. And we have a costed plan for 80%, and council would at some point probably want to see what 100% would result in. In advance of the COP26, explain what steps will be taken towards achieving net zero, especially in the short to medium term. Set an interim target to achieve in the next decade, which reflects the fair share of 50% global reduction in CO2 by 2030, identified in the IPCC Special Report on Global Warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius. So we have energy programs in place, including Energize Bridgewater and our energy management program, and those would count towards this. We would need to have analysis done to understand how the interim target of 50% by 2030 relates to our existing plans and programs. Is that enough to get us there, or will there be more that would have to be done? And staff are suggesting that we could complete that within the next 12 months with the existing staff capacity, and bring that to council to note what that would mean. Immediately proceed to planning at least one inclusive and equitable climate action as listed on their website that will help to place the town on a resilient pathway consistent with the 1.5 degrees Celsius objective of the Paris Agreement, and begin implementation no later than 2020. And we have 3 eligible actions on the list that the town could claim, with other actions likely reached by 2020. So these are already in the works.
2022.
2022, sorry, yeah. And then report on progress annually, beginning no later than 2022 to our usual or recommended reporting platform. So we already do some annual reporting, and we do this through the CDP reporting platform. We've been doing that since 2018. So, and that is an acceptable platform for this campaign. So we're already doing that. So essentially, with the pledge, the things that would change for us is going from 80 to 100%, and then having the 50% reduction by 2030. And those can be, a costed out action plan can be brought back to council. The pledge is not legally binding, so there is some time to bring that back. And based on Leon's review, he's suggested that other cities have made the pledge and have yet to do the costed out action plan. So it's a commitment, and the full implications we'll understand, but the goal is worth making that commitment now. So it is, there's no financial implications to do this year. As I said, we'll cost out what it would mean to go from 80 to 100% by 2050, and we'll cost out the interim plan of 2030 with a 50% reduction. There is some staff time involved in doing the analysis of the 2030, and so we're suggesting that would probably take about a week of staff time to do, and we can do that with existing staff capacity using Miles and Leon, and we would do that over the next 12 months. So we'd work that in, and we're already doing the reporting, so there's no impact there. So the recommendation is to have council make the pledge and have the mayor register the town in the Race to Zero campaign.
It's pretty good considering you're pinch hitting for Leon.
Yeah.
That's great. Are there any questions? Dan? Councillor
Yeah,
Thorburn?
just one, Tammy. We've been working at this for a while, and I'm not sure of what our percentage is now, but we should be up there fairly well along that road, I think. So 50% shouldn't be a big problem.
I'd have to, I know we have reported on that, I just don't
Yeah.
have right at my fingertips of where we are now in terms of our greenhouse gas reduction numbers, but I can get that for council.
Okay, no, I know we've been working on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
but- Okay, thank you.
I guess I struggle with this a little bit. I mean, I'd love to see our name on that list and so on, but without a concrete plan, it feels like we're just sort of paying lip service to the thing. You know, yes, we definitely want to be there. We do everything we can to get there, but we don't really have a plan in place or an understanding what the costs are going to be. And so having said that, is there any way to speed up the analysis of this, to do it in a shorter time frame? Like,
Yeah, we could, but the
Another report.
deadline to register is actually
yeah.
this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
You know, you
no to having it by
Yeah.
tonight.
I will just add, because I had the same concerns. So I received a call directly from the C40 who are leading this for the UN because they wanted Bridgewater on there. So as council knows, we do a lot of things with the C40. So it was pretty important for them, for us to be on there, even though we will be the smallest signatory for all the cities and places in the world that have signed on. We'll be the smallest. But they still wanted us there. But that was my question. And then my question led from there to Halifax is signing on. But there's an airport. So how do you get to zero if you have an airport? Because I would just think that that's just a huge center for greenhouse gases. So the answer that came was essentially they have time to figure out the plan, right? So to your point, you don't have to have all the answers now, because things will change. So technology will change. The example they used was so a more sustainable source of fuel for those planes then takes the airport out of the equation. More renewables in terms of the power generation for the airport means the airport itself doesn't generate a carbon footprint. So all those things, but that's not a now, it's how do you figure that out? So my concern, I shared my concern with you, especially because we haven't declared a climate emergency for a very specific reason. That is because we didn't want to declare a climate emergency for nothing, right? A lot of cities, and it frustrates me, declare a climate emergency and then they approve development infilling the ocean, which is you're acknowledging sea level rise in your climate emergency and then allowing a hotel or a condo to be built where it's going to be underwater. Like those two things are in conflict. So I think since the Smart Cities Challenge, since the other things we've put in place, we can get on board with that because we are doing things. So I don't know if that helps you or
somewhat. I mean, I guess could this, if we agree to this tonight to sign on, then could we make sure that this is an item on that work plan that we all refer to, and just make sure it doesn't get missed, and that we actually deliver on what we're promising to deliver on?
Okay. No, good point. Councilor McDonald.
If we got a year down the road and we got that analysis back and said, there's no way that we're going to be able to manage that, can you withdraw, or what happens at that point?
It's not legally binding, so you can reassess your ability to meet the pledge. Yeah.
Okay. What would be the negative impacts of that? We say, we'd love to be on that list. Is there a negative impact? Would there be any issues with withdrawing?
I think it may be more making a pledge and then stepping back from it.
Right.
So it'd have to be for reasons that were defensible. So if we found that just financially there was too many barriers financially to us making that, you have good reason then for why you can't do that. So if you have good rationale, I think it would be okay.
It'd be interesting because that's 28 years down the road, right? If you miss your 2050 target, so it's a long runway to get us there. But you don't want to commit to it
Yeah, right.
At least I think around the table, we believe that we can achieve it,
Mhm.
right? We've got plans in place. We had a plan in place to get us to 80 already, right? I don't know if a lot of cities that have signed on to this already had a plan to get them to 80. So we just have to get them to 20. And when I talked to Leon, there's just one barrier to get us the other 20, which is that we have a large factory in town. So Michelin is it's common knowledge, it's our largest emitter, but I also know from Michelin's side that they're already zero waste, so they're solving that issue. They're working to reduce their carbon footprint.
Mhm.
For the town portion, I don't think there's an issue for us getting to zero. It's how do we, those things that we don't have controls over, like private businesses, right? So it's getting those, but it's 28 years to solve the problem. Yeah. Other questions, yeah?
Just a comment that I'm very pleased we're in a position where we can consider stepping up to this kind of challenge. If I read that today and we weren't where we were, I'd say that that's a very bold pledge to make, and the fact that a community of our size is positioned to be able to meet that kind of challenge is really commendable, and staff have really gotten us there, so thank you for putting us in that position.
Other questions? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councilor Bergier?
Yes, I'll make a motion, Your Worship. That Council for the Town of Bridgewater direct staff to work with the Mayor's office to register the town in the Race to Zero campaign and submit the required pledge information to the campaign organizers before October 31st and submit follow-up information within the 12 months.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Caldwell. Have a good discussion. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. 9.5, recommendations for the PACE program financing terms. And
I'm pinch hitting again. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, you're pinch hitting. That's.
I know.
As we wait for the projector. I feel like you're pointing that at me.
Yeah. You'll have to refer to your screens as the projector is lost and our IT left before I turned it on. So it's not found on the thing. So this is some proposed changes to our PACE program. And we're looking for council's approval of some changes to that. And a lot of it has been brought upon by our recent award of FCM funding. That was part of the joint application that we made with Clean. And if you remember, there was an announcement that Leon made that we had received $5 million available to us in PACE, that we could provide in PACE financing at a very low interest rate to homeowners within the town of Bridgewater. And it was great news because it helped us in terms of being able to reach our goals set out in our Smart Cities application and Energize Bridgewater program. And it also enabled us to lower the fees through Clean for the entering into the program and having the audits and assessments done. So it provides greater incentive and less of a barrier for entry into the program by our residents within the town. So is everyone familiar with the PACE program? Or, okay, so a lot of this presentation that Leon prepared was a little bit of a refresh on what the PACE program is, but it's essentially a program where we strive to make upgrades affordable and accessible to our residents, and we do that through a financing program. The homeowner makes application, and then Clean is the administrator of that for us. They arrange for a home energy audit and our assessment, and they determine what upgrades could be done to a home, and they do an assessment to analyze the debt to savings ratio. So we look for a 1-to-1. So if you're going to get $10 of debt payment, you'll have $10 reduction in your energy costs. So they have to balance out. If they do, you're into the program. Clean arranges for contractors to do the work, and then they have the invoices. They bill the town for the work completed, and then we place the lien on the property. And then the property owner pays through tax bills back to the town over the set term. I believe it's up to 10 to 15 years that the property owner can do that for. And we have an interest rate that I know council has been interested in looking at all ways that we could lower that as well for the homeowner. So the current program is for single detached, semi-detached, or row houses. You have to live in the town, and you cannot have any taxes in arrears. We loan up to $20,000 at a 4.1% interest rate over 10 years. And as I say, your debt has to at least be equal to the savings to make it work. And then the investment will pay for itself over that payback period. So the theory is if you were 1-to-1 and you had a 10-year loan, by the time you were done, you would actually have some return on that investment. And as I say, Clean manages is the administrator of the program for the town, and they ensure that all of the individuals who do the assessments are qualified. So there's all kinds of upgrades that we'll consider under the program, and those are noted as well. It can go from insulation to damp proofing to doors to windows, heat pumps, solar hot air systems, solar photovoltaic systems, swimming pool heating systems, those types of things. And there is, as I say, a cost to apply to have the assessment done, and that basically pays for the fees. It was $450, and in June we reduced that down to $250, and that was based on the FCM funding. If you had a home energy assessment completed, market value is around $600. So that's quite a savings to come in under this program and have that done. There are a number of municipal units that are involved in PACE, and so those are noted as well as the estimated greenhouse gas savings per year, and that's even put into gigajoules for you as well, so you can see kind of the savings there, and the number of participants that we've had. With the funding through FCM, 4.8 million has been provided for retrofits to single unit dwellings over 4 years. So there's a 4-year window to do them in. So what that translates into is 176 deep energy retrofits of 28,000, with 30,000 including the town's financing for the town. So 176 homes at 30,000. The interest rate through FCM is 0%, and the amortization period can go up to 25 years through the FCM funding. And it flows through the Municipal Finance Corporation, and they have a 4% transfer fee. So there's a 0.4% fee that is paid to the Municipal Finance Corp with each loan. And with the FCM funding, we were able to create a loan loss reserve fund for Bridgewater of $264,000. So that's money that we'll put into a reserve fund to help provide some risk management for the town. If there's some defaults, we have a reserve to help cushion that blow. The grant funding to the Clean Foundation reduces the program admin fees and provides some enhanced marketing for the program as well. So more incentive for people to apply through this program to have retrofits done. And grant funding for homeowners is based on greenhouse gas emission reductions. So there is a grant of up to $2,000 per home that can be provided as well, based on your reductions that are estimated. And you can use other incentives and grants as well. So there is kind of a schedule. The financing doesn't come all at once. So we don't just be able to tap into 4.8 million in year one. It's incrementals over the 4 years, but totals 4.8. So year one was 443,000, and year two is 1.4, and then 1.5 and 1.4. It's recommended by staff that that this would be made available to, so the financing that we're going to propose would be made available to all new customers as well as current customers who have not completed the program yet. So they may have come in July or August, and with these new enhanced features, we're suggesting that they be able to participate in those or benefit from those as well. So the recommended changes or adjustments are the term. We have an interest rate of 4.8 and 4.36 based on term, and it's recommended that we have a 1% rate on that. And that'll deal with that 0.4% take by MFC, and then some administrative costs as well. In terms of what needs to be changed within our own programs to make this happen, the PACE program bylaw doesn't need to be changed to have that interest rate changed or the term changed. Our policy doesn't need to be changed. Our agreement with the Clean Foundation stays the same, but our fees policy needs to change to reflect the 1% interest rate, and our customer agreements need to change as well. And that would be updated to include the interest rate and the amortization period, which we're suggesting be 15 years, or up to 15 years, and the maximum eligible note would change from the $20,000 up to the $30,000, and that would be the changes that are proposed. So what would happen tonight is, if council's agreeable to these enhancements to the program, that you would give notice that you would amend your fees policy or consider amendments to your fees policy at the next council meeting, which would be October 25th, and that would be to see the interest rate change to 1%. And that would be regardless of term. The term we're suggesting would be up to 15 years. We have an updated Clean Foundation program terms that would be offered to Bridgewater residents. In October, November, we would do the program market rollout for this program. And then spring of 2022, we would have the program financial analysis and design complete. So if there's any tweaks that need to be made, we'll be bringing those back to council. And you would review that in the summer of 2022. So the recommendations are noted, and as the mayor noted, they are multiple for this, just because there's a number of components that are involved in this, in policies, agreements that need to be made. So as I say, the first one deals with amending the policy to have a 10 to 15 year term and a single interest rate of 1%. That then the Clean Energy Program financing program itself be changed, the terms of that, so we have some standard terms that aren't in policy, that we can go from a fixed 10-year term to a flexible term up to 15 years. So really the homeowner would decide based on their assessment done if they need the 15 years, but they might want 10. Some like to pay things off sooner than rather than later, but that it would be up to a 15-year term. That is a little bit more management for finance when everyone has different terms on loans, but it provides that flexibility to the homeowner, and they would be able to select the term that meets their needs. That there would be we maintain the existing clean energy finance program's minimum financing limit for all eligible properties at $15,000, and revise the maximum eligible amount to be a lesser of 15% of the full assessed property value at the time the PACE customer agreement is signed, or $40,000. So we would change that so that it's $40,000 or 15%, whichever is less. So 15% of the assessed value, or 40%, because you just want to make sure that it's manageable. We did pass a motion a few months ago, perhaps a year ago, where we reduced the amount of money that we would make available for the PACE financing program, because we weren't having a lot of uptake, and Kim was kind of having to set that aside. So I believe it was around $100,000 that we reduced it to. And because we now have the FCM funding coming in that we can use to finance these, or provide the financing to the homeowners, we're suggesting that we increase that ceiling, because the financing is available, to $1.68 million. And that would be effective immediately, so that we can start the intake of those. And that we would then obviously have to revise the program, the financing agreement for our program participants, and as well as make it available to those. So revise the agreements of those who may be in the program but haven't started paying yet because they haven't completed the project, so they can benefit from the interest rate as well as the term and the eligible amount.
Great. Thanks for continuing again. There's a lot in there. Questions? We've been kind of through this before. We've revamped this, tweaked it as we go. Councillor Thorburn.
Yeah, not really a question, more like a comment. We will not enter into an agreement under the POISE program that is least not cost neutral. It has to pay for itself. So
those terms still remain in place.
If it doesn't, then we won't enter into that agreement. So it protects us and the homeowner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
I guess I struggle a bit with the 1.68 in the sense that I'm not sure it's enough if we had all 56 properties in year 2 sign up, or year 3, whatever, I can't remember now what the chart shows, but is it a rolling cumulative total? So if it gets unused in year 1, if that it can roll, so it might not be 1.68, and does that make sense?
So we're suggesting that, yeah, it would be 1.68 based on the finance that's available. If it's not all used, and then the next year it's, say, 1.5 that's available, it would just get added to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the 4.8 can be fully consumed by year 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that they're kind of releasing it in stages. Yeah.
I guess my fear, given where we are in property values, is that a $200,000 home is relatively easy to find these days in the town of Bridgewater. I mean,
and that's 30,000.
And that's 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
I think your bigger barrier during this time of boom, if you will, is finding enough contractors to do 52 projects in a year because everyone is busy.
Yeah, perhaps that's
not
the bigger
complaining, it's
challenge,
great,
yeah.
everyone's busy, but
Yeah, fair
52
enough.
projects just in Bridgewater.
And
just
that
for
is
this,
that
that's
is
lot.
we had a
Okay.
meeting with E1 today, and that is a risk that the trades just aren't there right now.
Councillor
Just a
Fugere.
question about the loss reserve fund. How was that determined? Is that just based on a percentage of the total?
That I'm not. It wasn't. I believe it was what we had applied for within the application. So
Okay.
it's money that we would keep to offset. So what percentage? I'm not. I have to get
Okay,
that
I'm
detail
just
from
curious
Leon.
if there was a
But yeah,
template that we
It
had to
would-
work with. Yep.
it would be basically money given to the town,
Mm-hmm.
and almost like a grant, basically, that we could
Okay.
then use to offset. But does it represent a certain percentage?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could get that detail from you.
Other questions?
You looking for a motion?
Apparently looking for 5. Yes,
Well-
we'll start with the first one.
We'll do it for you. I would move that town council for the town of Bridgewater give notice pursuant to section 48 of the Municipal Government Act that at the October 25th, 2021 council meeting, amendments to policy 89, fees will be considered to enable to replace the 10 and 15-year PACE program interest rates with a single interest rate for the clean energy financing program set at 1.00%.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Fugere. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried.
That council for the town of Bridgewater directs staff to modify the standard amortization period for the clean energy financing program from a fixed 10-year to a flexible term of up to 15 years, and permitting program participants to select a term within the range that meets their needs while adhering to the program requirements.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Caldwell. Further discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
That council for the town of Bridgewater directs staff to maintain the clean energy financing program's minimum PACE financing limit for all eligible properties at $15,000 and revise the maximum eligible amounts to be the lesser of 15% of the fully assessed property value at the time the PACE customer agreement is signed, or $40,000.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Frazier. Discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. You're on a roll.
That council for the town of Bridgewater directs staff to increase the annual finance ceiling for the clean energy financing program to $1.680 million, $1,680,000 effective immediately.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Caldwell. This side of the room's rolling. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried.
And that council for the town of Bridgewater directs staff to offer the revised and approved financing terms to all clean energy financing program participants, as well as the existing participants who have signed a PACE agreement, customer agreement, but who have not yet begun their installment payments, by offering these homeowners a voluntary amendment to their agreements to reflect these updated terms.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Frazier. You guys are not quick enough on this side. We'll maybe get you on the next one. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you for that. We don't have a director of finance. Can we just move that financial condition indicators report to the next meeting? It's not time sensitive, right? It's still going to be as
that's fine.
as
Yeah.
unbalanced and unfair in 2 weeks as it is now. So
Yeah, I think it's fine to refer. We've actually improved,
yeah.
right? So, but it's mainly to see if there's any feedback we want to have included in our response back to the province, because we do have the ability to have comments put on the web page with these that kind of explain some of our rationale.
Asking for trouble.
Yeah, it is. I mean, but when you look, I think when you look at what it is that we're not necessarily green on, we're moderate risk on. It's probably not a surprise. Like, we're penalized because of budget accuracy, but they were surpluses, right?
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. That I think that you can easily provide explanation to. Probably the biggest thing for us is the undepreciated assets. So we have a lot of aging capital, and so we're going to be making change to that by investing in that.
Yeah.
And you know, so there's things like that probably in the next year or two we might see some improvement in those numbers as we go forward. But if you want a detailed explanation, we can certainly defer it.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I agree. I think this is probably the best report card we've had for a while, because there's no red.
yeah.
'Cause we did have red before, so, you know, yellow's not that bad. It's right
No,
next to green.
it's an improvement. It's
Yeah.
still frustrating for every town across the province that gets penalized because they say, you know, you're not investing enough in infrastructure, but if you invest more in infrastructure, they say, well, you're not putting enough in capital reserves. Well, you can't have it both ways. And then the budget accuracy one is just a joke because it was, you know, either you had too big a surplus, or we didn't know that it was going to have that massive snowfall in 2015, 2016, and so they're like, well, how come you didn't predict your snow budget more accurately? I would love to see the province's budget for that snowfall. So,
Well, unfortunately, we'll never be able to have enough money in reserve to pay for depreciation. That's the one that we just don't have the resources to do that. We need to spend the money.
Yeah, and so I think combined reserve, we're at 39.6. So
Yeah.
I think operating, we're fine, it's capital.
and we are better
Yeah.
in capital.
Yeah, we're getting
So-
better in capital, and as I say, the undepreciated asset one, we're putting $8.4 million into new infrastructure, like
Yeah.
over the next couple of years with Exit 12A. We're putting millions of dollars into our wastewater, so that's going to change those numbers because we're making those investments in capital. On the flip side is, you know, your reserves are penalized and your debt service ratio goes up. And, you know, the 3-year change in tax base, that one at 2.5%, that's just implying that your tax increase in your tax rate in terms of your assessments that you can tax hasn't had the same increase as your cost to operate. So costing us more to operate than we're able to generate in revenue. So, but over the last year, we've seen a lot of property transactions and construction activity, and our assessment bases are going to change, and so that should change as well. And residential tax effort, of course, that's all part of your economic development strategy, and why you want to see growth is to lessen the burden on your residential rate.
Well, look at that. After all that, we had a discussion about it anyway.
There you go.
Anyway, it's an interesting read, as frustrating as it is. And I know that the town mayors and I have one conversation. I know rural mayors tend to have another conversation. Theirs always looks favorable because they have more shared service agreements with the province. They have more cost sharing. They don't have an infrastructure burden like we do. But we're getting better, and that's something. Down to business rising and unfinished business, the street, park, and trail naming and renaming policies. I see Mr. Brown is here. Sorry to make you wait in those really comfortable seats, Nick.
It's all right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So on behalf of the Heritage Advisory Committee, staff present for Council's consideration 2 revised policies, naming of streets and naming of parks. Since around 1990, both policies have set forth provisions for new street and park names, considering basically historical background and physical site. The revised policies are much more comprehensive and inclusive of situations where streets, parks, and trails are recommended for a replacement name. The proposed policies are designed so that intent is specific and the procedure is somewhat flexible. Parts of the draft policies that relate to public engagement and consultation with committees of the council within the naming and renaming sections were written in a vague manner to allow for flexibility to react to each situation and engage as deemed necessary. The Heritage Advisory Committee and staff believe the ability to make changes to an internal procedural document, which will be developed by the Heritage Advisory Committee, as situations warrant, is a more practical and efficient approach to public engagement, as each new name or renaming request has varying consequences to those affected by the process and the resulting decision. 2 policies contain parallel provisions. They are pretty much a mirror image of one another. The same process with respect to consultation. The big difference is the proposed street naming and renaming policy includes a provision to prevent the use of commemorative names under any circumstance, while the proposed park and trail naming and renaming policy still enables the use of commemorative names, but only in exceptional circumstances. So importantly, park and trail naming renaming policy uses discouraging language with respect to commemorative naming, and such name would be subject to recommendation from the Heritage Advisory Committee in consultation with the Anti-Racism Task Force and the Parks and Rec and Culture Committee, and then ultimately approval by Council. But the Heritage Advisory Committee does see value in commemorative naming, and that's why it's still in these proposed policies has a place in the park and trail naming and renaming policy. Value in commemorative naming as a way to preserve and promote history. There's less of a risk if a park or a trail has to be renamed, as there wouldn't be residents affected by the civic address change. So it is recommended that Council approve revised policy 16, naming of streets, under the new name, street naming and renaming policy. And it is recommended that Council approve revised policy 15, naming of parks, under the new name, park and trail naming and renaming. And should Council approve the revised policies, that Council direct staff to conduct a review of the corporate sponsorship and naming rights policy to ensure consistency. And with that, I'm of course available to answer any questions.
Questions from Council? I'll just let me then thank the Heritage Advisory Committee and the Anti-Racism Task Force for their input on this. I think this is a great balance of still having a window for commemorative names in an appropriate setting, while reducing that risk of naming a whole street after a person, and then years later realizing that you have to change that name at great cost and great inconvenience. So again, thank you to the committee and to you, Nick, for bringing this forward. Other comments or questions? Councilor McDonald.
Just a question. So I want to make sure that I'm very clear on this. The purpose of separating streets from parks and trails was that if we determine that the name is a commemorative name and no longer appropriate, that signage can be removed promptly and wouldn't go through the same sort of more lengthy process as a street. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that is correct. At one point, Heritage Advisory Committee and staff had the two policies combined, one full policy, considering all those situations, and it's just much cleaner to separate them, and as it is now, have policy 15 and 16. But you're right, so as the mayor alluded to, if it's a street renaming process, there are residents that are affected by that change. So the process is lengthy. The policies describe that process. You basically go through a whole renaming procedure, and then it bounces back to the decision around a new name. Whereas the park and trail, pretty straightforward. If council wants to rename a park or a trail, switch out the signage. There's obviously brochures and other promotional material that would need to be changed, but we don't have to go through that same process with we don't go through that same process with the public.
Just to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. So one of my concerns was that I know that the window is definitely narrowed for Memorial Road park and trail names. But my concern is the impact of a name. So if the individual that our park or trail is named after has victimized someone in some manner, the impact of publicly and pretty significantly honoring that individual has an impact on that individual, whether it's on the name is on the corner of a street or if it's on a park or wherever. And in a small community, that person is likely driving past that sign regularly. So can you give me an idea of how quickly, if it was a park name, and 10 years down the road somebody broke a law or did something and we said we've got to get this sign down, how quickly could we get a sign down, like in a park or a trail?
Right, so process for park or trail rename, basically the complaint comes into, well, either the community development department. There's a few places where that complaint can come into. And then the community development department would notify town council that that this request was made to change the name. At that point, council would then direct staff to continue on with the renaming process or not. And then it says town staff shall engage with the public through a consultation process on the renaming request as the situation warrants. So again, you get that flexibility in that consultative process. So if it is deemed to be of serious or creating some sort of serious harm to an individual or group of individuals, then that process can be done quite quickly. I would think that getting to council, coming back, engaging with the public, and then making a recommendation back to council shouldn't take much more than maybe 2 months, but hopefully more like a month.
Okay.
Couple meetings.
Okay. Thank you.
2 months.
Yeah, gives me a little bit of peace of mind.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think if just to elaborate on that, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but if we had a park named after a person, and that person was tomorrow convicted of a crime, found guilty of a crime, you could take down the sign tomorrow. Yes. The process still has to take place. Okay. So if that was part of your question, then
yes,
then you could physically remove the sign.
Yes.
Like you could just, and I don't think you need council's direction for that. If it's like the CAO could say we need to take this sign down.
We would poll council, and that would be down. Street name, you can't do that because there's EHS, there's fire, there's all that stuff that has to be advised, and you need a name, right?
Right, and that first trip to council would council would make the decision at that time that it is being renamed, so then staff could take that and sign it
Perfect.
at that time.
Okay.
Councillor Caldwell.
I'd just like to clarify, so the policy that will be on the table for streets renaming will include the possibility of commemorative names, is that correct?
For streets?
No.
Yes.
No, it
That's just
streets.
off the table? Okay. So that was not the recommendation of the Heritage Committee. So can we just explain to the public and to the Heritage Committee how we came to this point?
Yeah, so council had a discussion. I don't know, did you want to?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so as Councillor Caldwell has mentioned, the Heritage Advisory did recommend commemorative names being part of both of these situations. So for the renaming or naming of streets, renaming or naming of parks and trails. So the Heritage Advisory Committee consulted with the Anti-Racism Task Force, whom did not want the commemorative names to be part of the policy. They wanted to prevent the use of, that committee wanted to prevent the use of those commemorative names. The Heritage Advisory Committee was still recommending the use of commemorative names in both situations, in both policies. Staff then engaged with council, and at that point, explained the position of the Heritage Advisory Committee. But through that discussion, staff understood that in the separation of these two policies, the park and trail naming policy could still make use of the commemorative name option, whereas the streets, based on the fact that it is quite an arduous process to rename a street, that the streets policy would prevent the use of commemorative names. So that was staff's understanding based on discussion with council.
Does that help answer your question?
It does. I will say I'll probably vote against the motion simply because as part of the Heritage Committee, we debated at length, and I'd like to support the original intention of the Heritage Committee because I believe heritage matters, and I don't think that we should allow the negative experience we've had with Cornwallis Street to cloud our judgment. I think there's no need to ban commemorative names altogether. The policy was going to discourage their use, and I just think it needlessly ties the hands of future councils when they could consider commemorative names in the future. So I'll be voting against it for that reason.
Other questions or comments from council? Is someone prepared to make a motion? Deputy Mayor Tanner.
I move that Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater approve the revised Policy 16 naming of streets as presented in Document 20-123E as Policy 16 street naming and renaming for the town effective immediately.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor McDonald. For the discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We have another motion for the Section 15. Yes, thank
I
you.
feel like I'm filling your shoes tonight, Councillor Thorburn. The Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the revised Policy 15 naming of parks as presented in Document 20-123E as Policy 15 park and trail naming and renaming for the town effective immediately.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Conklin. Sorry. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Do you want to keep going?
If I can. That Council for the Town of Bridgewater directs staff to conduct a review of the corporate sponsorship and naming rights policy to ensure consistency with the revised and approved street naming and renaming and park and trail naming and renaming policies.
Thank you. Naming and renaming is
boy.
hard now. Seconded by Councilor Thorburn. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Down to new business. Workman's compensation.
Yeah. So this is here for information for council. I like to provide council with an idea of what our WCB premiums are. It's often depending on the occupation, can be a reflection of occupational health and safety programs, and because often injuries can be caused through WCB or safety related, for, as I say, the most part, depending on the occupation. So we have it provided for you in terms of our rate for the industry group, which would be our police services, local government, as your first one, and you can see there that our rate is high, and we have a demerit on that because of that, and that's based on claims, of course, that cause that. So we're at the high end of what the experience rating would be, or the group would be for police services at 468. And as I say, sometimes it's the nature of the work that WCB was changed a couple of years ago, and PTSD and those types of injuries that happen with those types of occupations are eligible WCB claims, whereas previously they weren't. So there's all kinds of reasons why you could see a higher experience rating there. For fire services, which is the next one, I believe it's the next one, yeah, volunteer fire departments, we have a merit, so we have a positive adjustment on the rate based on our claims history there. And so that's 63 cents for every $100 of assessable payroll. And then for the remainder of our town, which would be municipalities, we have our own grouping. And here we also had a merit, so 63 cent, I guess, to the positive adjustment based on our claims history there. So our rate for municipality is 230, and it could be as low as 206 or as high as 468. So that's a positive indication there. So it's important to council because we do pay premiums based on every $100 of payroll. So it can, for policing, it's $100,000, and it depending on your payroll amount and your premium, that adds to your cost. So often we look towards occupational, and WCB will assist municipalities as well if there's any areas of concern with looking at your occupational health and safety programs and how you can make changes there if there's any room for improvement.
Okay. Question?
So I've never seen this before. I don't believe I've ever seen this before. So I'm trying to understand a bit. So is this, for police services as an example, is this so unique to our situation that Kentville, Truro, I don't know, Pictou County would not be similar?
Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah. So they do give the grouping for that, and
right.
And they do note that it could be, it's police services, but it's also grouped under municipalities as well. So it's kind of at the riskier end of the municipality grouping. They just note there that because of the claim history, we are higher. I haven't contacted Kentville or Truro to see what their premiums are, but I would suggest, given the nature of the work, that it's
everybody
probably
would be
comparable.
Up, like,
yeah.
Somewhat. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be curious of that too, because that's alarming when you look at it and go 1,200% higher. But if it's 1,200% higher compared to just municipal units, then yeah, like that, it doesn't. It's not apples to apples. If you're comparing police services to police services and we're 1,200% higher, then we have a problem. It
is under municipalities. So
right.
So it's municipalities, police services. So that grouping, we are at the high end.
But if I went to Kentville and I don't know, Truro, let's say, and said, how did you guys rank or rate, and they didn't have that kind of escalation factor, then I'd be certainly looking for help to.
So we can.
Something's wrong. Something like.
Yeah, I can certainly,
okay.
I can get that. That would be very easy to get, to find out how we compare that way. And then if there's any red flags, we can certainly have that conversation with the commission to see if there's any room for improvement, whether it's occupational health and safety or support services or anything that can be provided to that workforce.
I do know that the byproduct of the higher amount is the fact that our chief and deputy chief take this very seriously. So when there's PTSD and other mental health supports that need to be put in place, they react quickly. So the opposite, like if there are departments and I'm not saying there are, but there are
No.
departments trying to keep their claims low by maybe pushing that to the side. I'd rather pay more and get people the help they need than, but it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to see,
Yeah,
and why, right, and learning why we're higher or lower.
yeah.
Councilor McDonald.
Did you say that this document will also be presented to the police commission?
I provided it to the police chief, who will talk to the chair to determine whether or not they want to include it on the agenda, but it does impact budget.
It should be on the agenda
Yeah.
for the
Should be on the
submission.
agenda for the police.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions on that? Councilor Thorburn?
Just one, when you read down it, it said a rate for 2022 could have been as low as $2.06,
Mhm.
or as high as $4.68, yet our base rate's at $2.93. So where does that number come from?
Base rate would be,
Our base rate, industry rate is
Yeah.
$2.93, so how could it get down to
the
$2.06?
basic industry rate would be $2.93. I'm not too sure. I'd have to get clarification from them on why that's different than $2.06.
Yeah, I
But I
mean,
think at 206 might be because there were merits given based on experience.
yeah, but the demerit was $1.75.
Oh, no, but that would have been the basic industry, right? Yeah.
No. It just seems to contradict it. I'd just like to know, I would think it should be as low as $2.93 based on the industry rate, not $2.06. Maybe you can check it out and let me
Yeah.
know. No worries.
Other questions? I think this is also the first time
I've never
we've
seen
seen
it before.
that,
I don't
so
I haven't seen
No.
it.
appreciate that going forward. It's good.
Yeah.
No other questions, comments? Hearing none, we are at the end of the agenda. So that was I was kind of scratching my head, it was a short agenda. Make up for the last one, that was long, I guess. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councilor
moved.
Thorburn, seconded by Councilor Cole was first. We are adjourned. Thank you.